Hey, this is jkdino, and you're listening to Hoot Dawg Radio.
Welcome and thank you for listening to Hoot Dawg Radio, the official podcast for members of the Hoot Dawg Gaming Clan. I am your host, Gunbait101, and with me this week is my co-host, Zoltanky. How are you doing, Zoltanky?
Good. Happy to be here. How you doing?
Just fine. And with us also this week we have two guests. And first I'd like to welcome ClearNite. How are you doing, ClearNite?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on.
And our other guest is jkdino. How are you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. So, it's been 1 week since we've actually released our beta podcast, and if you no doubt have noticed, we've actually named the podcast now. We are now Hoot Dawg Radio, and so that was some exciting news for us. But also, I'm kind of interested what happened in your guys' week this week.
Not much for me. I was out of town most of the week. I was away on a conference. So for the first time since I picked up Destiny 2, I haven't really done much at all this week. Normally after reset, I try to hit the Crucible milestone, try to get into some raids, try to do the Nightfall, and I haven't really had much time to do anything. So this week's pretty much a wash for me. I'm looking forward to starting up reset again. Tomorrow as we're recording on a Monday night, but it's been pretty uneventful for me as far as Destiny's concerned.
Cool. I myself have actually I played a little bit of Destiny this week, went through all my milestones and went for all the powerful upgrades and stuff like that, but I'm still chasing after 305 myself, and I've gotten a bunch of boots and a bunch of robes, and I still can't get gloves to save my life. Actually, gloves are not even dropping at all for me, so I don't know what I'm going to do. Hopefully next week is some change for what drops for me, but that's been my week in Destiny. I haven't been raiding or anything like that, so...
Yeah, it's tough when you get a point or two away from max light. I remember in the Taken King, I got stuck at, I want to say 333, 334. Couldn't get a primary to drop at 335. Couldn't get a class item to drop. It seems like that's always the problem when you get 1 or 2 points away. You just can't get that last thing that you need.
Yeah. Well, I know. I think it was ClearNite and Dino, both in jkdino. We all kind of went through the Crucible matches, and which was I thought we actually had a good time. There was a equal amount of matches that we were just completely destroyed in, and there was an equal amount of matches where we were actually doing the destroying. So I thought it was pretty fun. But anywho, anything exciting going on in your guys' weeks? ClearNite, Dino?
Well, couple big things. We did some of our flashpoints, and I basically like to hit all those anyway. And I think this was the first week without a raid in a while, so that was kind of a little bit nice, and that kind of helped with some sleep, but not really, because we ended up playing other things like the PC release. So I think I could say I'd split my time between the PlayStation and the PC, and just we get to certain points in the PC, and then I would see some friends on, and I'd join them up, and we'd do some Nightfalls and other sorts of the Crucible, like you mentioned. We did that, and still chasing 305. I'm kind of two characters both hitting towards that direction, so I'm trying to get both of them at least closer and closer, so got a few points here and there. And then PC, which we'll go into a little bit later, but finally started my character on that, and that was actually an interesting struggle to kind of figure out which one I was going to go with, but I went with my old mainstay, which I can talk about a little bit later.
Cool.
Well, myself too was spent splitting time between PS4 and the PC. Was able to get my my hunter up to 305, my second character to that level. So I was pleased with that. Came from that run through the Crucible, so that was a worthwhile endeavor.
Nice.
Awesome.
And I went with my old reliable, the Titan, to start up the PC, and it's been interesting trying to do mouse and keyboard with that. So,
okay. Well, we won't spoil that conversation just yet. That'll be coming up later. But why don't we go ahead and now that we have our kind of our weekly rituals and activities out of the way, let's go ahead and do the news. Okay, so first off in the news, the Destiny dev team on Tuesday, that would be October 25th, made a small blog post to share some facts about recent bans that were issued for the PC version of Destiny 2. And they said, here are the facts. Destiny 2, or Bungie for that matter, cannot automatically ban you. Only Bungie can ban a player after a manual investigation. On release day, they banned approximately 400 players on PC, and the bans were applied to players who were using tools to pose a threat to the shared ecosystem of the game. And they did not, and they added, and they will not, issue any bans for the use of overlays or performance tools, including Discord, XSplit, OBS, RTSS, which I'm not exactly sure what even that is, and other stuff. They supplied information using third-party applications with Destiny 2 and provided a help article. Bungie also said they're overturning 4 of the bans that were issued during the PC beta. In their conclusion, Bungie said, "We are committed to providing an experience that is fun and fair for the millions of players who have joined us in this community." And then afterwards, they had a little update note at the bottom of their page. They said, "As part of the ban review process, we have identified a group of players who were banned in error. Those players have been unbanned. The bans were not related to third-party applications listed above. We will continue to review the process we use to ensure a fun and fair game." Dino and ClearNite, I imagine you guys were successful in missing the ban this week.
Yeah, it's still on.
I tried
playing,
Dino, but it didn't quite work out. So just.
Oh, well, thank God that didn't work.
You didn't get your aimbot running this week.
It's always next week.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually really happy about that too. Like,
yeah,
it was funny because this made news and people were like, "Oh wow, there's a lot of cheaters." I'm like, honestly, we don't really hear about this thing, and there probably was an additional attention to it, which is why they probably brought it up, I think, a bit more. So, because they knew people were,
Sure.
considering, aimbots and other sort of fun, hacks and such. So, but the community kind of, does what it does with it, interprets, which is fine.
Yeah, I noticed that Reddit was kind of blowing up about it. There was people saying they were being banned, which, I mean, Bungie has also acknowledged that they have made some of the bans that were made in error, and they've gone back on those. They've corrected them. But I'm actually very happy that they kind of took that very quick and hard stance as far as, swinging the ban hammer, setting an example right off the bat that they are not going to tolerate that.
I just love that on day one, just that PC mentality. Day one, there were enough people that were just like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just break this. I know I just unwrapped it. I just installed it, but I'm going to go ahead and break it. I'm going to do something I'm totally not supposed to do. Enough that 400 of them got banned on day one. That's just amazing. Even though it's on Battle.net and I know they have all these safeguards in place, it just shows you that on PC, people are always going to find a way around it. I mean, as you're going through the list, Discord is the only program that I even know what the hell it is. obviously because we use Discord. The other stuff is not even things that I've heard of. Of course, I'm not a PC player. It's just funny how that happens. Also, I think it's funny that they point out that they overturned 4 bans from the PC beta. It's like, well, congratulations for those 4 guys that I'm sure were sitting on the edge of their seat waiting all this time. Right? Yeah.
All right. I guess, is there anything further to really add to that? I mean, there are some people that were banned, and there are some people that were unbanned, and there were some people that were banned in error. So,
you said, it's good to see that they're willing to take that step from the very beginning. I think that was a problem in Destiny 1 that probably didn't really get the recognition that it deserved. I know that people got banned. I don't think it was a super common thing. But as someone who experienced a denial of service attack on more than one occasion, it's just good to see that they're already setting the precedent that if you're doing things that are explicitly game breaking, that they're willing to take that step. I think that's important to set that precedent from day one.
It's hackers and cheaters that always like to challenge, right? So even if it's day one, that didn't surprise me too much in the sense of the numbers, just because that's, if you look at the scale of things, I don't know how many millions, started on PC because tracking and all that I haven't looked at, but it's not really that large of a number, although it's high profile because you hear of it in the PC. But people are used to customizing and doing whole kinds of stuff with their PC games, and there's just been some unfortunate great games that have been just ruined by hacks. So it is good to see Bungie take a real strong stance on it, I think.
Yep.
All right. So with the bans out of the way, we'll move on to this week at Bungie, which it came out on Wednesday. Doesn't it usually come out on Thursday?
Usually.
Okay.
Usually, yeah.
I thought it was a little bit strange, but maybe they were just trying to accommodate for the PC release. But anywho, the first thing off the list in the TWAB was Bungie announces the PC release of Destiny 2. And what was neat was included in the TWAB was a Vidoc about the release of Destiny on PC, and what it was like to transform a console game to the PC to make it feel like it belonged on the platform. And then basically in the section, they called it Looking Ahead. They mentioned their stream at TwitchCon and how the torch was passed from the development team to the live team. They also reshared live stream event TwitchCon images as of some of the armor and that we can look forward to in Season 1. And I must say, it does, especially like the Dawning and some of the, I believe that's Iron Banner. Some of the Iron Banner gear that we looked at, it looks quite a bit different from, and that will be Season 2, if I'm correct, with the ones that they
still
shared
have
the top, correct?
And one more round of those for the Season 1, and then Season 2 will bring those in, especially, and with the changes that they announced. But it does look pretty slick. I mean, you can kind of see with the Iron Banner, it still has that sort of Eastern Asian type of theme, seemingly, from what we can tell from the clipped screenshots. But the Dawning was always very interesting, very creative. Some people liked it, some people didn't, but at least it showed some creativity. You can kind of see pieces of that now there, and it looks a little more colorful. So it'd be interesting to see it in full regalia.
Yeah, I really like the Dawning set from last year, and while this is definitely different and they're not showing us everything, I kind of want to see what the top of that Titan helmet looks like. They're not showing us much, but it's reminiscent, definitely, the Dawning stuff from last year. As far as the Iron Banner, like you said, it carries the theme over. I would say this probably isn't my favorite Iron Banner set of armor. It's still better than the Rise of Iron, which I thought was just awful. I know a lot of people loved it. I did not like the fur kilt. I didn't like the jogger pants for the Titan. It was just not my favorite set. I was more of a Taken King, looking like a friggin' space knight. That was kind of more my speed. But I think this is cool. I like the way it's got nice, slick, clean lines to it. I can't wait to actually see the top of it.
Yeah. Most of the pictures, they have kind of all the heads kind of chopped off, so it'll be interesting to see live presentation of it sometime soon. So
yeah, and I'm sure we'll get more into this kind of as we talk about seasons going forward. But in addition to the armor, it's well worth taking note that the weapons are also going to be changing, for what I understand. So I think there's quite a few of the Iron Banner weapons that are better than people initially thought they were. I'm seeing them more and more in the Crucible. I'm hearing more about them on Crucible Playbook and on some of the other podcasts. But, at this point, I think everybody wants more variety. So it's good to see that they're kind of getting out ahead of that early on in the game. We've already seen some production work about the new weapons coming out. So, yeah, it's exciting.
All right. This next section of the TWAB, I was not expecting. I thought they would probably go over a little bit more of what happened at TwitchCon, but there were some announcements and they brought on a guest onto This Week at Bungie to announce some other things and basically just to reaffirm that they are listening. That was a message that was that resonated over the TwitchCon stream last week. But game director Christopher Barrett said that he is also working on making Destiny 2 a game that will challenge and reward you in new ways. You may have heard from, and this is Deej talk, but you may have heard from him in the past. He introduced new ways to play in House of Wolves and Rise of Iron. He is an engaged player, a guardian like you, and he has some new thoughts on how the world of the game should adapt to the way you play. So here's Christopher Barrett, and basically he said, we've been playing the game in the wild for 7 weeks, and like Destiny experiences that have come before, we have always been thinking about where the game is heading next. And we're still planning a bunch of the improvements. Listed below are going to be I'll just read now. Listed below are going to make their way into the game. But we wanted to let you know what we're up to. So here's a short list of updates we're working on. And the first thing on the list was they said new systems and rewards to give our most engaged players additional optional pursuits. And I think what that was going back on one of the things they said with TwitchCon and when they said additional and optional pursuits was they also wanted to make sure that it didn't feel like it was your job to make sure you got it done or had those pursuits completed. You can choose.
That's pretty vague. That's pretty vague. I don't think they're really telling us a whole lot there, but it's good to see that they're still thinking through ways to continue to make it challenging and engaging. As I know, a lot of people are already kind of hitting a wall and running out of things to do. So
yeah. And then they said better incentives for players who complete challenging prestige activities, which I have to agree. There's not much incentive to do the prestige challenges.
Better incentives for a masochist.
Indeed. They said better rewards and replay value for strikes, which I have to agree that there has to be some reason to do strikes other than getting tokens, but strikes, adventures, and lost sectors, which the last time I tried out a lost sector, or actually meaningfully went into a lost sector was just to rank up. And ever since I've been past the leveling or the ranking system, I really haven't had any desire to go back into a lost sector.
I think the only time I've done one recently is it's the daily or the daily challenge, or it's maybe the flashpoint, perhaps. That's really the only time it's like, oh, okay, I got to do the check mark, do the one lost sector, and Winding Cove or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely neat the first time you stumble across one. Or, like ClearNite was saying, when it's the flashpoint. It's really cool. I mean, the level design on a lot of those things are really amazing. I mean, they're little mini story missions. But there's not really much of a replayability factor. Once you've gotten in, you've beaten whatever the yellow bar bullet sponge is, and you've emptied the chest out. As cool as they are, and I'm sure a lot of design went into them, there's just not a lot of replayability. So it's pretty cool that they're trying to think of ways to make those relevant still. So yeah, that's all good news.
Yep. And then this next one, it brings a tear to my eye, and I'm just so thankful that they mentioned it, because it means a lot for us, as especially as a clan as well. But they said private matches for the competitive community. We are targeting early 2018. So, and the reason why I make such a big deal about it is because we have it's nothing anything major, but we do have a small competition that we do within the clan, and it's a nice, we did one last year because we had private matches to do it, and it was a very fun event, I thought, and it was a nice congregating event for us to get in and actually do some Crucible matches with each other and just kind of enjoy ourselves. And that was our Red Bar Classic that we had last year. Or
Yep.
It was actually this year.
It was long ago.
It was in the spring that we
months.
did it. So.
I know.
I know.
And I only remember it very
like
vividly
was
because I
ages
missed
ago.
it due to vacation. So I have fond memories for missing it. So looking forward to the next one.
That's right. Yeah. I just remember it because I remember thinking I'm never ever playing against Ray again. Like he was everywhere. I was thinking, oh man, I'm finally safe. I'm on the other side of the map. They're like, nope, he's got me again. And he's one of those kind of scary PvP players where he's really quiet about it. He doesn't make a big production, but then you look at the kill feed and you're like, holy crap. I'm really excited about this. Like Gunbait said, I'm looking forward to being able to do more clan activities. I know when private matches came out in Destiny 1, for the first probably month, me and my wife, every day, whenever we got home from work, we just load into private matches and just do stupid stuff like, sidearms only, snipers only. And it was really a blast. But the key thing for me about private matches is it allows you to really get a good working knowledge of the map. And it's harder to do that when you've got 4 guys that are shooting at you, when you can really jump around and you can see where all the good hiding spots are and where your mobility points are going to be. It's a huge advantage for PvP. I was really hoping to see the community do a little bit more with private matches during Destiny 1. I know a lot of the content creators and streamers, they've been talking about it for years, and then when it finally came, I thought, oh man, this is going to be great. It's going to be like the Super Bowl every single night. You're going to see like the top streamers and leaders going against each other, and then it kind of fizzled out. I think people kind of got bored with it, and it also happened really towards the end of the life cycle of Destiny 1. But glad to see that they're already incorporating that, and looking forward to the Red Bar Classic
I think
Part
a lot of
2 coming
the
up.
streamers, they did it for a week or two, and they tried their own sort of crazy style games and mix and match different things on. I remember Bannerfall being used for something that looked like almost like a volleyball game type thing. It's just very odd, weird, friendly, funny, goofy sort of things. But then it did fizzle out.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it was just because it came a little bit late. There was a little bit of that, but then everybody was sort of like moving on to other things at the time, and that's probably what it was. And the other thing I'd like to see is that before, when we've heard about what they were working on, they were talking about custom matches, and they mentioned specifically private matches. So I'm hoping they're also talking about custom, and it may sound like a semantics thing, but for those that played, let's say, Halo or some other games, a custom match really allows you to enforce some of the rules, like you mentioned, Sky. Mm-hmm. Like you and your wife, probably said, all right, this is shotguns only, or this is snipers only. But with a custom match, you could actually change a game type, like running Halo with King of the Hill with only pistols, or swords, or so. Those are the things that I'm hoping that they're considering. Yeah. I think they are. It's just a matter of the time that's spent, to actually develop it out.
The best one that I saw, the best use of private matches that I saw was what was that Crucible map?
Oh yeah,
with the man cannons. You had the two cliffs.
Crossroads.
And then, Crossroads. I love that map anyway, but people were using it for skeet shooting. And that's probably one of the best. Somebody goes flying out of the cannon, and if you've ever tried to actually shoot somebody when they're flying across that gap, it's not that easy, but it is doable. I think a lot of people had fun with that at the beginning, but then they realized that pub stomping is a lot more fun once you get to that level. So, but yeah, I'm glad to see it back.
Indeed. Okay. And then there was, they said Crucible tuning, like adjusted supremacy scoring and better spawning rules. And then they said better incentives for completing Crucible matches. And then in parentheses, it said
that was interesting. I saw that.
Competitive games.
That intrigued me, what they're thinking there, because that's been talked about on various podcasts and streams. So that'd be interesting. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if it's like a time delay or you just don't, they delay like rewards or something after certain matches or something.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that's their problem to worry about.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they're looking into possibly doing something like that. Because it's frustrating if you're in a match and you just see that person leave or gets disconnected, and it happens so often competitive just because they feel like that they're not going to complete or do what they came there to do. They're not reaching their expectation, so they leave, and there's not really not much of an incentive to stay because the rewards aren't that great.
It's disheartening. I mean, I don't really play competitive at all right now. I just don't feel like I'm really at that point yet with Destiny 2. But I mean, even a quick play match, you jump on, you've got time to do 2 games, and then, you spawn in, and then you see automatically 2 people leave. You're just like, oh man, come on. So it's like, I have the option of staying in here and hoping that the game match makes somebody else in who's not going to have much incentive to stay, or I can just bail and try to find a better match. So I mean, it's frustrating. It's hard to say, what's really fair as far as penalties, because you never know. I mean, there's times I've lost my connection. It probably looks to everyone else in the match like I just quit. So there's a lot involved there, but it's good to see that they're taking that into account.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they would do anything for one disconnection. I think they'd be looking for multiple disconnections in a short period of time.
Sure.
There's a pattern of something happening there. That either you really have bad internet or, you're doing something to manipulate your situation.
I didn't think about that, Dino. I mean, yeah, you could be right. I mean, it probably has to be kind of a buildup of something, to where they realize it's causing a problem. I mean, they're probably not going to do anything anyways if you just, you could be disconnected. You could have just, you had to go to the bathroom or something like that. So, you go AFK and there you go, you're out of the match. But yeah, you actually have probably put more thought into how they penalize than I have. So, I mean, but that's interesting. I didn't even think about looking at patterns of how they, why they leave or, how many times they leave. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that now that you bring it up, I think that the AFK thing is definitely something that's worth also addressing at some point. I know that these kind of changes are incremental, but Destiny is one game where you're really not penalized for going AFK for a very long time. And this is, like we talked about in the beta, most of us had spent quite a bit of time this past summer playing GTA. If you're not moving in GTA after a few seconds, you start to get a warning. I think part of that is just you're not going to clog up the server. You're not going to spend time taking a spot where they can matchmake somebody else in. And I'm running into that a lot in the Crucible. It's one thing where somebody's camping a spot, I'm probably doing the same thing, but you can tell when somebody's just straight up just not, they're just waiting it out, trying to get the rewards, and that's frustrating. But it's a different conversation.
Indeed. Then the next thing, Christopher Barrett said that they're looking into changes to make the mod economy more interesting and impactful. which I believe we can all agree. There's not much going on in the mod.
There's so much potential to it
environment
too,
right now.
except for maybe some of the recharge of certain elements, or adding the element. The one thing I do like is being able to change an element on the on a gun, energy weapon, right? But that's a cool feature. But more, so I don't have to go and have 3 copies of shock and awe. I could just have a couple mods I can throw in, a solar, a void, or an arc, depending on burns or whatever I'd want to do for that. So that was a cool little thing. I was unexpected, but they could do so much more with that. They could even add perks, maybe, and other things that would be interesting, I think. So that was the one that caught my eye a lot on this bullet list.
Okay. And then they also said ongoing improvements to exotics, including adjustments to reduce instances of duplication. So, yeah, because I think it was last night I hopped on and I received 3 Lunafaction boots in a row. So I was pleasantly happy to see that one listed in that news article.
Yeah, I remember in Destiny 1, I had enough Crest of Alpha Lupi that I could have opened up a wholesaler. So I like the fact that they're addressing that too. I mean, it gets to the point where people have to be realistic. If you're doing a lot of grinding, you're going to start getting duplicates. I mean, eventually you just run out of stuff to get. But it's good to see that they're recognizing that people are getting a lot of the same stuff, and nobody likes that. That's frustrating when you see that exotic drop, and you're like, oh yes, it's one that I already have 4 of. So that's good. They're addressing that too.
Yeah. And this one here is, I think, specifically for Dino, an emote interface that allows players to equip salty, spicy ramen, 6-shooter, and flip out all at the same time.
You got to have the right emote for the situation,
I mean,
we've be able to troll people properly. So
it's not that there's only 4 directions on this thing. So it'd be kind of nice to see if they could take advantage of a little bit more than just the one that you can assign. I've been talking about that since Destiny 1, but we'll see.
Yeah, RNG still hasn't blessed me with
I have
any
yet
of
to get
those
an
yet,
exotic
so
myself.
you guys will have to tell me how it goes.
And I resisted purchasing the 6-shooter the other week when it was available. I said, nope, I will get it at some point. But
yeah,
I'm hoping that it's a little more than just allowing the exotic emotes to go on that emote wheel. Or that,
I'm thinking they're trying to
interface.
be catchy with it, like that's DJ's sort of. Well, this was CJ, right? So he was kind of saying it, but I think they're just the most iconic ones right now that people think of. So I'm hoping you're right. It's not an exotic perk. It's just, because then you would only be able to do one, right? So you have 10 remotes you can do now, but only one can be exotic.
Spicy ramen. That's so.
Like, no.
And another thing too, I think that we just inadvertently skipped over is I mentioned new ways to spend surplus currency and materials, and then they add in parentheses, looking at you, legendary shards. So that's going to.
I didn't inadvertently skip over.
Is this
that.
a new segment called Gunbait's Vault?
Oh, I'm
Put
sorry.
the tally on the
but
vault.
It's okay.
Yes.
No, but I was thoroughly happy to see that, because that means that, the only way I can think of that they can fix that is if they actually have vendors, that may be planetary vendors, that may be the gunsmith where you can buy guns outright, or who knows, they may surprise us in something that's completely purchasable that, you can use on legendary shards to work towards getting another gun. I don't know exactly, but yeah, I myself.
Yeah, it means that they're putting something in the game that it's actually worth spending that stuff on, which right now there's nothing. As I mentioned before, I started Destiny 2 a little bit later than the other guys in the clan. I had to evacuate Hurricane Irma. And so when I got back, everybody else had already completed the story mission and they were getting legendaries. I was like, man, how do you guys get so many legendaries? And people were like, yeah, I've got 300 legendary shards. I'm like, I still haven't even gotten a legendary gun yet. Now, I'm just deleting everything. So we certainly have more currency than we do stuff to spend it on.
For Iron Banner improvements was it was going to take a combination of legendary shards and something else. Oh, tokens, I believe, right? So maybe more of that, more vendor or NPC purchases like that. So
yes,
it'd be interesting. Even the faction, I was surprised when the faction was only Glimmer. So it's just one of those things that I was surprised about.
Okay, and then
yes, maybe that means that there'll be. Oh no, I'm sorry. Maybe that means that there'll be actual, bringing actual purchasable weapons, which that's something that going into Destiny 2, towards the Rise of Iron era, we were having the weekly roles resetting, which was great because you have these weapons and you're used to them being a certain way, and then they bring about the perks resetting from week to week, give you something to chase. Now with static roles, we don't have that anymore, so it's kind of interesting to see what they're going to introduce to the game, because I have a hard time seeing static roles changing. So I don't know if that means that they're just going to be introducing a much wider loot pool, or exactly how that's going to play out.
Well, what I was kind of hoping for is with, if they do offer vendors selling weapons, maybe each week they, let's say they offer a gun or, maybe like 3 guns each week or something like that. Not just throw out the whole loot pool, but, they just offer 3 guns that change out each week. And then, there may be actually, I know there's still guns from like Vanguard stuff that I have not received. I still don't have the Curtain Call rocket launcher. Trying to kind of hunt that down. But yeah, there's little things that they can do to offer for us to purchase weapons, and we may have them for that week, and we just have to wait till next week. But they definitely need some way to get rid of legendary
gunsmith
shards.
quests where you would get a certain gun that was there is kind of what they went through with this new RNG style. It'd be nice to be able to just go in there and like purchase ones that were already achieved, just not have to always carry all them around. And you're right, I still haven't gotten a main ingredient fusion rifle. I've been waiting for forever since the beta. So there are still things to chase, but generally speaking, once you find your equipment, you're not going to be chasing the same gun because it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, what is the tally up to, by the way, Gunbait, for the week on your?
And then,
okay, all right.
It was 1,825 legendary shards. So, about each time I get on, I end up having about 100 legendary shards just tacked on to the amount. So, yeah. So I'm fingers crossed. Hopefully they got some good stuff down the road. Further on into the TWAP, they did announce that there was a patch note preview. And they said next week Bungie will be deploying patch 1.0.6. They mentioned to stay tuned at Bungie Help for updates on Twitter, and for dates and times early next week. And I would probably say right around reset, which is tomorrow, as of this recording. But they said that, and I'll just kind of run through this stuff here really quick, and then we can comment on it afterwards. But they said it includes general fixes as well as some of the changes to the Crucible. In the general slot, they fixed an issue with collision detection on the bureaucratic walk emote, so no more jumping through walls. Fixed an issue with causing players to encounter empty public spaces too often when in free roam. I guess, I get that actually happens a lot when you're trying to go into public events, right? I mean, so many times you're entering into an injection rig public event, and you're finding out that you're the only one sitting around shooting vents out.
I'm glad to see that they've called attention to that, because I thought it was just me. I mean, it's crazy, especially like when it's the flashpoint. You're getting on right after reset, and you just load into a completely empty lobby. And you're trying to solo public events and stuff like that. It's like, I had a hard time believing I was the only one on, that they could load into that instance. So it's good to see that they're addressing that, because for as many people who are on playing, especially like the Flashpoint areas, it seemed like a really empty
some reason
world.
It seemed
so
like it got
glad to see
worse
that
over time,
maybe it wasn't
I know
just me.
population can drop and all that, but still, you're dealing with what is it, 16 potentially in a zone, maybe. I forget the exact cap on it. You at least have 4 or 5 in the beginning of the game, and for months, and maybe one of the hot fixes caused this, perhaps, because it does seem to be a little bit more prevalent nowadays. Like, I'm alone here, just sitting here, and I'll have a fire team like Dino come and join me. It's like, hey, thanks, I'm going to take down the walker now. It's just, but it's not something that was there day one. It seemed like they may have incurred that one, so it's good to kind of see that they'll address that.
Yeah, it's definitely been better to roll as a fire team to do public events right now, because even when you show up with 3, no one, you don't even necessarily get anybody else to join you. So
they went on to talk about the fixes that will happen in the Crucible. They said they updated Mercy rule settings to allow Mercy to activate slightly later in the match, allowing wider range of scores to trigger it. So in Clash, they reduced the score to 50. It was 75. In Control, they reduced the score limit to 90. It was 100. And they reduced the influence that enemy control zones exert over the spawning system. Which I've ran into that problem a lot, and I'll go even into Supremacy here in a little bit, but just experiencing just bad
there's
spawns.
Been some video
constantly.
montages made of that too. I remember seeing one that was like a minute long, and this poor guy was just dying and dying and dying. Was it?
It might have been me, ClearNite. I mean,
Yes, come on now.
I'm just screaming at my screen, just why?
Yeah.
No, that's uncalled for. Okay. In Survival, they reduced the time limit to 2 minutes, down from 3 minutes, and reduced the life count to 6, down from 8. So all those people that were complaining that survival matches were going on for way
especially
too
trials.
long,
I think that's the thing I've heard. I hadn't played trials with survival mode, just didn't have a chance to. But that's one of the things I heard feedback from others. Like, it just feels like it's too long. Trials cards taking too long to go through, right?
Well, I think.
Yeah, and that's just crazy.
I think people were reporting right around 3 hours for a trials card. Yeah, that's an investment of time. Then in Supremacy, they increased score to win to 70. That will be up from 50. And then we now grant 1 point for defeating an enemy guardian, and adjust the influence that
I like that one.
have on the spawning system. So,
yeah, and I've heard some talk in the community about that, where people said, I never knew the enemy crest influenced the spawn. I know that was also an issue in Destiny 1 as well. If somebody was lagging really bad, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but if you try to run over their crest, you can't pick it up. Had that happen to me many times, and so I figured, well, in Destiny 2, I'm sure they'll fix that. Well, they haven't. So, I guess that it's registering. I guess the game is registering that crest as being a player, or something kind of like that. So, I wasn't really aware that was becoming an issue as far as respawns and so forth, but good to know that they're fixing
there's a lot of people who are using the scout and the sniper game in Supremacy, because it's an upfront, in-your-face style game, but still it would be nice to not necessarily just have that aping going on, that they call it, right? Just going down and just charging through. It's nice to get some reward of being a distance player in that case, to make it balanced at least. So I thought that was good to kind of add some pointing.
Yeah, and it also opens it up for, like you said, for different play styles. I mean, I typically like to kind of stay back a little bit further. I'm more of a scout rifle guy. It's good to know that, I can still contribute to the team just from getting kills. And then you have other people that are going to be more aggressive, that are going to, be more like forwards that can pick up crests and so forth. So it's good to know that you're still being rewarded for getting kills. That was the problem with Supremacy. It's the only game mode where, just doing the shooting wasn't really accomplishing much of anything. So.
Okay, and then in that same patch release, Bungie also posted in the TWAB a small list of known issues on the PC version of Destiny 2. And if you are having issues, they have a PC support thread under the hash help forum on the Bungie.net. And we'll probably go over little PC issues down the road later in the podcast here. Let's see here. And then in other news, which I'm not going to go too far into this just because, let's face it, it's outright spoilery. And I don't want to ruin that for anybody. But there was a Reddit user by the name of the Ecumen. They posted a massive Destiny 2 PC data mine dump on Reddit with some major spoilers or leftover audio files from Destiny 1 possibly. But I only listened to a couple of them just because I was just verifying that they were actually real. I didn't go into too much, I didn't do a deep dive because I personally didn't want a whole lot of stuff spoiled for myself. But did you guys end up listening to any of them yourself, or?
Yeah, I did. I actually listened to most of it. I've got no problem with spoilers. So, I won't really go into it too much. It definitely sounds legit. You hear the actress that does Lakshmi talking, and that's a pretty distinctive voice, and so it all pretty much checks out. Of course, all the stuff's completely out of context, so it's really hard to know. You can't pick up a whole lot of info from it, although it does kind of tip off some stuff that we may see coming down the line in Destiny 2. But with anything like this, you kind of feel bad because you're seeing some of the inner workings of the game that we're not really supposed to be seeing or hearing just yet. But
I
it's on
tend
Reddit,
to
I'm probably
avoid
going to
some
listen
spoilers.
to.
I mean, it depends on the time frame, but I remember I did listen to a couple different video reviews of Mesa Sean had a few and points on it. I didn't go too deep, but just heard a couple things, and it seemed interesting. But I'd rather hold on it, and I don't think it's remnant from Destiny 1. And just my own thought, just because PC didn't have that, and it just seemed like this game, it's such a large game to begin with that it may be something that's embedded for future, or maybe it's on the cutting board. They just didn't clean it up. I've seen that with some of the breakouts on maps, right? Like certain people that can clip through a map, and they'll find an area that's either underdeveloped or just tossed out, and just as a map designer, they just probably used a temporary space. So you never really know too much. But you're right, if they're paying an actress or an actor a certain amount, there's definitely was a purpose for that at some point, whether it's future or just toss aside for the time being.
Sure. Yeah, and again, without spoilers, some of the clips make reference to stuff that's directly Destiny 2 and would not be Destiny 1, so kind of leads me to believe that it's more stuff, like you said, that's kind of embedded in the game for a later time.
Is there anything to add to that? Or
No, I didn't listen to anything. I heard a few tidbits going on, but no, I didn't listen to anything.
Good.
From those, so.
Good.
Well, actually, it tells you the location of that missing chest from Vault of Glass, so, I mean, I know where it is now.
So, all right, you'll have to be the tour guide then.
Do we have to stop the podcast and go there now?
Well, no, because it's at the top of one of those jumps, and I'll never make it there. So.
Oh, okay. Well, good point. All right. Okay. So that was the that little leak that came out, but until we know more on that, we won't actually speculate too much on its contents or anything like that. Like I said, I haven't even listened to it myself. In due time, I'll probably listen to it. And then, basically this came straight from Activision's site. They announced the Curse of Osiris DLC pack for Destiny 2. And I didn't know if anybody wanted to go into detail about this, or they went through.
Yes, that was the most excited thing I was seeing about, because I just like blowing up the Vex.
To be the Vex.
Yeah, so I was Vex, Vex bullet 1 Vex. That was my note there. It wasn't actually on the Vex.
You did write it in all caps. I figured
I'll
as
admit
much
to that
because
one.
I thought it was like strange as like, why would they just write Vex?
That armor and such,
So how cool does Osiris look? I mean, yeah, I didn't see it coming at all. I mean, we knew that we were going to have an Osiris DLC. We knew that probably involved the Vex. I was at work today. I just hopped on Facebook, because I was bored, and I saw that, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because I just had no idea that was going to be coming. And Osiris looks awesome. He looks like some kind of like Aztec shaman or something. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that armor, but I didn't have too much time to dig into the content that we've seen so far, but it's nice to see the lighthouse. Hoping that that's going to be maybe a social space or something like that. There's a lot of talk about that in Destiny 1. The lighthouse is really huge. Of course, I only got to really explore it once, but it's a really huge space, and it seems like it was designed originally maybe as a social space, and I think they'd actually confirmed that at some point. So it's good to see that again. The part that intrigues me the most is when it says new raid content. So that probably excludes the idea of a second raid. It does seem awful early for that anyway, but I'm kind of wondering what new raid content is going to be now that we already have ultra hard mode. I'm hoping that they're not just calling challenge.
I was gonna say, I wonder about that too. I got all excited when I saw new raid, but then in the blurb of Activision, it's marketing speak, right? So I wonder if it just means adding to the existing raid, but if it's Vex, it doesn't seem to jive with that. So that one was really kind of perplexed to me. I didn't see if Deej put any clarification on that part in there, but I was expecting, as soon as I saw new raid content, well, it's Vex, it's Mercury, so there's got to be something new that's there. But it was interesting. Unless maybe it's revisiting some former Vex raid that existed at one time or another and repurposed for this thing. So it wouldn't be a new raid, but maybe it's revisited. Maybe it's VOG. So that would be kind of exciting. So.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll probably come to that because I'll read down this list of all the things that they announced for the Curse of Osiris DLC, but I do want to touch on that new raid content again too. But they said they're expanding the universe by adding all new cinematic story with new and returning characters, a new destination to explore, Mercury and its infinite forest. And from what I heard about that, I don't exactly know. It's all speculation right now, but it could be a metaphor that it's called the Infinite Forest. But there's been some people speculating that this could actually be one of Bungie's first procedurally, I can't say that word, drawn map. Drawn environment. So
I heard that. I have a hard time seeing that. It just doesn't seem like something that would be in Destiny. I'm not sure how the mechanics of that would even work, but that is kind of interesting. Although Mercury and its Infinite Forest sounds like a bad prog band.
Well, I think I would see it as a new like horde mode, like how we have. How we had Prison of Elders or Court of Oryx, but I'm thinking of an endless dungeon.
Maybe,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
They do
of.
have some
and maybe
input into Blizzard.
Maybe it gets harder as you go along.
Talking to some of the Diablo
that's my
and
speculation
other,
at this point.
Teams and stuff. Where they had different portals and I forget, what was it, rifts in Diablo, and different, procedural dungeons originally in the Diablo history. So, you never know. It's always, it's always fun to speculate, right? Until you know, then your hopes are crashed. It's like, it just means that there's 3 ways to do that particular strike. It's like, okay. I'd be okay with.
It's going to turn out it's just Prison of Elders.
Gosh.
The Court of Oryx, or
but in the woods,
the prison, or even the Archon's Forge, right? Like any of those right now would be kind of just good, mind candy shooting activities to do. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember in week 1, after Rise of Iron, going, man, if Destiny, if Rise of Iron was just Archon's Forge in patrol areas, I'd be fine with that. Then 2 weeks in, I was like, I was really stupid.
And then Zoltanki touched on this earlier, but a new social space to visit called the Lighthouse. Which we've all heard of that before.
New to a lot of people.
I don't know if it'll be the same map or it'll
including
be
myself.
kind of reimagined. But
exactly.
Hey, it'll be new to me.
Hey, I'll show you guys around.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Thanks, tour guide. New missions, new strikes, and I'll come back on the raid content here in a little bit, and then new free roam activities and a world quest to complete. And more. About the new raid content, and I've been thinking about this for a little bit, but I know a lot of people want more raids, but my personal feelings on that is there's plenty enough to do. In I'm not talking about stuff to do for us in Destiny 2. What I'm thinking of is there's plenty enough on their plate to fix with the main game right now, especially giving us private matches, learning how to actually incentivize us to play a little bit more. My personal feeling on the raid content is I hope that they're just adding to the existing raid that we have right now, and maybe bring another a brand new raid with a future DLC. But I don't think I'm ready for a new raid right now myself. I'm hoping that they can actually take some of those resources and actually put them into some of the quality of life changes that we're kind of so wanting to see in the future. But I would also think that with the raid content, and you could be right. Maybe
never know. They're bringing back.
That sounds insane that they would bring back an old raid or something like that,
bring it back reimagined, maybe in some way, or maybe phases of it, perhaps. I mean, the one. Yeah, I think the only thing that they set an expectation with Destiny.
Yeah, the timing's just what's weird with it.
Going back,
yeah,
I was in the alpha of Destiny and kind of saw the evolution of it, and when Crota came out, right, that is when the Crota raid came out. So you're looking at a very similar time frame where the game, Destiny 1 was released. They had their, the main raid, and then they had, Vault of Glass that came a week or two later of the release. And then when Crota came out, that was, the smaller raid, right? We all kind of joke about it being a smaller raid, but it was a fun raid. So it's one of those things that, they sort of set expectations, because then when House of Wolves came out later that spring, the following year, everybody was really disappointed that there wasn't a raid, because they had already set up expectation with that first DLC. Oh, get a DLC, get a raid. What do you mean? What is this Prison of Elders thing? What is, what's Trials? What the heck is this? That's never going to fly, right? But ultimately it did, right? It's, more, obviously more so the Trials than Prison, but still that's one of those things. And it's interesting. So I'd be curious to see. I'll never turn down more content and more things to do. But I agree with you, Gunbait. It's focusing on some quality of life issues and some additional content that you do daily, right, and weekly. But hey, they have a raid team specially dedicated to raids, so let them do it too. Keep everybody multitasking.
Yeah, maybe
I was
they'll
waiting for that thing.
Maybe they'll finally give us that House of Wolves raid that we were supposed to get, right, guys? Am I right?
And I didn't even think about that. ClearNite, you said that they have a dedicated raid team, and I'm hoping that they are truly a dedicated raid team,
right?
Not,
and I'm sure some of the development team is shared in some cases, but I remember them doing some raid walkthroughs where they brought in the raid designers and the producers to kind of do the walkthrough of, I forget which raid it was originally. If it was, I don't think they ever did a raid walkthrough of Vault. I think it was either Crota or King's Fall. One of the two they did a raid walkthrough, and they brought the team in for that. So that was pretty cool. Because I remember that was Luke Smith later in King's Fall, but so. Yes,
I think they did a full walkthrough with Crota, and
King's
then
yep.
And then they did a art run through King's Fall. So, but I don't think they ever.
I don't think they ever did.
I can't remember. It was a while ago, but I don't know if they actually went through Vault ever completely.
Yeah, and it's a bigger conversation. I'd like to do maybe upcoming do a show that's mostly devoted to kind of discussing the new raid. That's not even getting into the older raids, which are also endlessly fascinating. But Leviathan is kind of an unusual raid. I'm kind of wondering if we're going to look back in 3 years and say, well, that was kind of the oddity. That was the Crota of Destiny 2. Where, it's a raid, but it's a little unusual, or whether this is really kind of setting the precedent for what raids are going to be like in Destiny 2, where it doesn't follow the kind of structure that we had in Destiny 1, where it's going to be a little bit more creative with level design. I mean, when you look at Leviathan, the encounters don't even really have boss battles, like we're used to in the past, and the sequence changes from week to week. It's not a dark pit. It's this ridiculous opulent gold and white area. So I don't know. It's a bigger conversation. It's just definitely intriguing when they say new raid content, because they're probably not giving us a raid. Maybe they're adding something on, but like we'd said before, how does that work in what seems to be a kind of a Vex focused expansion? So be interesting to see.
Alrighty. Sorry, Dino, what were you gonna say? Or were
you? No, I was just gonna say they got some Twitch casts coming up here, in the coming weeks. So hopefully we'll get some information before too long.
I'm wondering if it's going to be Wednesday like previously.
They have 3 planned. I think I heard.
Definitely tuning into those. That'd be really excellent to watch. I don't think they said when. They just said a number of them, and they're in November. So
did they announce a schedule for them
this week?
I did not see that.
Probably hear of it. I don't know if it was this week was the first. This being the 1st of November. I don't think they were doing that. So maybe they're going to do maybe 3 up until Thanksgiving, perhaps. So that'd be interesting. Yep.
Probably hear more on the TWAB this week. Probably a schedule released.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, with the news out of the way, let's move on to our main discussion topic, and that is the Destiny 2 PC launch experience. So earlier in our news segment, we went over the announcement in that Bungie had made that they launched the Destiny 2 PC version, and today, as we mentioned at the top of the show, that we are joined by ClearNite and jkdino, 2 members of our clan. That I think they're the only members of our clan that are on the PC version, and today they're here to share their experience with us and maybe share similarities or concerns about the PC launch. So basically, I do have some questions, and I don't know how you guys want to go about that. Basically, are you guys having initial impressions about the PC launch experience at this point, or would you care to share right off the bat before we start asking questions? Or
sure. I mean, I think I'll let maybe Dina go first, but one of the things I think we both discovered is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dino, this is sort of, getting back into a mouse and keyboard sort of layout, although it's not required, was something that you were trying to do. And I've done that in the past, and it's kind of reacquainting it and trying some things out. But I know that was one of the things that we were talking about, when we first loaded up, just, hey, what are you using? Using mouse and keyboard or controller? It's like, well, I'm trying to use mouse and keyboard for a little while. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty comfortable with it. So it depends on
this is my first try at the mouse and keyboard as a regular thing, and I can certainly see where it's appealing. There is a lot more ease of use once you get it down, but trying to get my old mind wrapped around some new configuration has taken some time. So it's nice to be able to try that for a while, and then when I get to some platforming, to switch back over to a controller and go to what I know, and platforming's not my specialty anyway, so I got to go with what kind of works. So,
indeed,
so that's been nice.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there's obviously interface changes to accommodate for the PC, and we'll be going over this here in a little bit. But field of view changes, depth of field, and and I think the number one thing that's on everybody's mind is the frame rates. And yes,
the frame rates.
But first question that I had though, and I'm kind of interested in knowing like what the experience is as far as as we all know, on the PS4. We have our friends list built into the ecosystem. We can actually send friend invites, and we have parties built into it, and that all kind of changes up, with PC releases. And as I said before, and Zoltanki and I are both not on the PC, but we're just kind of interested in the differences. But and being that I'm not a PC player, how is the initial feeling of like the Battle.net app? Are you finding it easy to use? Are you having any like difficulty?
Yeah, and I'm going to have to take your word for it, because my $200 HP laptop is just not going to run it. I mean, it's no matter how hard I've tried. So.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny too, because the way in which you said it was exactly how Dino and I approached it. We're like, oh, okay, like, how does this work? I mean, I don't know about you, Dino. I've actually had Battle.net experience from before, being played, Blizzard games from back when, and before even Battle.net sort of came out, and then eventually came out with Diablo 2, I think, or 3. Somebody will shoot me on the listener audience, but one of those particular games, and then StarCraft was just huge. StarCraft 2 was just huge on Battle.net. So I had played it with friends in the past, and Diablo 3. I know WoW is big in using it, but one of the things I'd say about my revisiting back, because it's been a while, I haven't touched it in years. Actually, I had to re-download it because it's been so long with different computers. That it's very minimalistic. It doesn't give you it gives you what you need. It logs you in. It allows you to look at your friends list. And it was interesting going down memory lane. I had, 5 or 6 different friends that I had played a lot of Diablo with, for example, or StarCraft. And it's interesting because how PlayStation says, it's been 10 days since this person was last on. Well, I was counting up some of the days, and I forget if it said years or days, but there's some of my friends were not on it for years, like 5 years, So I'm like, well, hide all ones that are inactive, and I did that. So my friends list was pretty clear. I do have some, Discords that I do join up with, and I've seen some names that, hey, friend me on when you go into BattleNet and such. And so I might eventually do that at some point, especially if, looking for more, people to kind of play with. But my biggest thing was, okay, the friends list itself with BattleNet's always been a little tricky. It's always been this way. I'm not quite sure why. For me, the search has always been very frustrating, and I think that's what Dino and I found is, we both knew each other, and because we had tapped into the clan setting immediately, we kind of joined up with our clan on PC as PC players. We were able to see each other very quickly, because there's a menu similar to PS4 where you can see who's from your clan is currently active and online. So that's how we ended up first joining up to each other. But then I started thinking, in the past, I've either used the game speak within games, or I've used a team server like TeamSpeak, or now Discord's obviously one of those as well. And we didn't have that set up, so I'm like, oh, well, let's see how the in-game chat is, because typically it's pretty poor. And I think my first remark to Dino was like, hey, this is actually pretty clear. I was surprised at the quality of the in-game chat within Destiny, and I'm not sure if that's because it taps into some of the BattleNet servers, or if it's just Destiny, the Vicarious Vision code, but it was clear. I mean, for PlayStation, Xbox, in-game chat outside of the party system is pretty poor in my opinion. So, but I thought it was pretty good quality, and we
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a little quieter than I was used to. And when we jumped over to PS4 later that night, it definitely seemed like that was, a little louder, a little bit more clear. But I don't know. I was doing some research. I believe through BattleNet there is a way to set up a party chat using the BattleNet app, but we haven't been back on there yet at the same time to try that out. But all in all, yeah, I thought in-game chat was, at least usable. Then wasn't hurting your ears to use it, so that was definitely nice. And just getting the friend request together, I thought was kind of interesting. I was telling Gunbait about that it just kind of seemed like we ended up being friends by accident. Then we going back and forth, tried to send friend requests, and it just kind of ended up happening. It's like, okay, we're friends now, but I'm not really sure how it works.
Did you get it? Did you get it? No, I didn't get it. Did you get it? Did you get it? I sent it to you. So, inspect me, check, send friend requests, that sort of thing. So we eventually figured it out, but it definitely was a little learning curve. So I am curious to see what others less experienced in, this sort of thing would run into. And I know there is a text chat that is, it's serviceable, but nothing to write home about. We didn't even bother trying to use it. And if anything, it's just become an annoyance because I apparently have bound a key that is the start of the chat is also my sort of bring up my ghost. So I have to figure out a different key for that, because every time I hit bring my ghost, I end up going somewhere, and then my chat comes up. So I'm like, all right, stop. It's a little... Right. Yeah.
So there is in-game text chat available. I mean,
yes, you can whisper to individuals if you can type their names out. You can type to your team, and you can type to your fire team. I didn't quite understand what the difference was between team and fire team. By hitting the enter or return key, you'll toggle before you start to type between like send to fire team, send to team. And you can do a whisper similar to what you'd see in Discord, DMing somebody directly. But that's it. I think some of the feedback I've heard from others is that there's no general feed. And I was actually very thankful for that, because to be honest, in a lot of PC games where there's text chat, 90% of the time, you see this in like Elder Scrolls or WoW or some of these other ones, half the time the general chat is just spam. Like, hey, you want to buy this and this? And it's just, it's like going through a forum, where you see a spam bot. You think the PS4 porn bot is bad, It's like it's a different nature. It's more selling goods and selling services than anything else. But so I was kind of happy not to see that. But but it would be nice to have a clan chat. I think that was the one thing that I was surprised that even if you're not in the game, if you could do a text chat within your clan, it knows who you are as a clan. So it'd be nice to kind of do that. Which is odd,
because I know if you go to Bungie.net, there is some chat functionality on the website too. So maybe something down the road that they'll institute, because there is that capability of doing that. It's just not in games. So interesting.
Yeah, it probably hit their what they call in software a minimal viable product. Basically, this will work for what we need to, and then we'll look to enhance it later if it's used or not. Based on the metrics. So,
and as you mentioned before, you guys are switching. It seems like you guys are switching between keyboard and mouse. Dino, are you pretty much primarily using keyboard and mouse right now, or are you comfortable with using keyboard and mouse, or are you primarily using controller?
I'm using keyboard and mouse as best I can. When it gets pretty chaotic, I end up going back to the controller just because I'm not quick enough reaction yet to tune in on everything. But I want to give it a good shake before I decide not to use it. So I'm not finding it too bad, though. I see the interface offers some good opportunities to do more than a controller can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say mine is more based on mood than utility, I think, because of what I'm doing. Like, I like to just sit on the couch and play in front of a TV, and I do have that set up with a laptop I can plug in, and I've done that, but I found that my keyboard positioning isn't as strong, so I notice more wear and tear on my wrist and such. But if I was at a computer desk, and my computer was there and I have a monitor, I would have no issue with the mouse. Actually, if anything, just prior experience for many years with mouse and keyboard FPS games and others, it's an excellent interface. Like it's seamless. And if anything, a lot of games, like there's a lot of games on Steam, for example, that you could switch between keyboard and mouse and it'll detect it and things. I don't think there's any game that I can think of and where it actually changes the mode a bit as well when you change from a keyboard to a mouse. Like you can actually just move the mouse and move. You're in mouse mode, and you're doing and the interface, and you can see the arrow changes, and then within a split millisecond of you touching the controller, I plugged in my PS4 SCUF USB direct, and no issue. It detected it. It even knew that it was a PS4 controller because it would show the squares and the triangle and the X. I know it from beta experience and other Steam games, it can detect your Xbox as well. I didn't try using my Xbox controller. I was just using my SCUF for PS4, but it's amazing. And because like you'll hit the E key to use something by default, whereas you hit the square to do it, and you can keep going back and forth, and as soon as it refreshes the screen, you mouse over it or you screen over it, you'll see the respective, hey, I know I'm in keyboard mode. So it's really seamless on how they do that. You literally could just like, oh, I'm about to do this, I'm going to go grab the controller, and experience of that I've had in the past is Battlefield, for example, I used to always use mouse and keyboard for just general FPS use, but when you would hop into a vehicle like a plane or a helicopter or something, you just grab your controller and just immediately start using it. And you'd see that, but it just wasn't as seamless to me, and it just always seemed to have a little bit of a jarring effect to it. Whereas here it's just you can jump back and forth. And I've heard some discussion on this, that the biggest difference between the controller and the mouse and keyboard is like there's the aim assist and the recoil. So I don't know if we want to go too much into this, but basically there is a difference in how it's set. So it's kind of pretty impressive to me that they can change not only what input you're using, but just the behavior of the weapon at the same time. You go to a mouse and keyboard, you don't have the same kind of recoil that you have on a controller where it starts to tip upwards. They made a point of that. And you can see that immediately happen. And the same thing with aim assist. With a controller, there is that mild aim assist that does occur that you can disable, but by default on mouse and keyboard, there's no aim assist because you wouldn't want aim assist on a mouse and keyboard. You want to aim and shoot. You don't need to be assisted. It actually, if anything, it makes it worse if you had aim assist on.
Well, we'll probably go into a little bit more of the sandbox questions here in a little bit, but as far as like maybe differences or subtleties that you notice between console and PC, but in general, are you noticing any issues with lag or latency as far as like other players teleporting in public events, or are you getting shot behind walls or anything like that as much as you would on a console, or is it running pretty stable for that part?
I haven't encountered any of that yet. I haven't really gone into the Crucible, so I can't say how that is. situation, but public events, I haven't noticed anything yet.
Yeah, and I'd say definitely. I've done a little bit of Crucible. I did more in the beta than I have in the release version, but I have done a little bit of Crucible, and I would say, I don't know if it's because just the server is different or the code. I haven't noticed as many oddities and lag. Like, you can't say the PC doesn't have lag, because I played PC games for years, and there's always like red bar warriors, right? So you're going to have that basic connectivity. So some of it could be based on population, but to be honest, I haven't really seen as much jumping and teleporting that I've seen in other games, and even in PS4 I haven't seen as much of the jumping, although I have run into a few people who are invulnerable apparently. I haven't seen that in the PC yet, and it's interesting because I've tried both the mouse and keyboard and the controller in the PC, and I'm effective with both of them, but in some cases I think I've heard it said that there's a complaint about controllers and auto aim and things like that. You have a really good mouse and keyboard person, the responsiveness and the speed at which you can move your to a point of spinning will blow out a controller. I don't care about aim assist. It's that person's going to have higher reflexes. So the highest quality mouser will do much better than, I think, in my opinion, than a controller, as long as you have the same equal strategy and thought and game awareness and things like that. I think that's the big difference is, all things being equal, I was a little disappointed with the speed of the controller response in terms of speed. Like, I put it up to 10 in the controller setting, and it's barely maybe moving as if on the PS4 would be like a 4 or 5. So I haven't really gone into the config files, which you can do on a PC, so I might start to play with that a little bit, but that was probably my only thing is I find in a controller, if I'm really going against a lot of mouse and keyboard users where they're spinning around me, that's when I go back to the mouse and keyboard. It's like, all right, enough of this, because I might be able to aim and shoot better from a distance, but once you come up up front and heavy, it's a different experience. So it's interesting. They both have positive and negatives, but it's
how are you finding the weapons are handling differently on PC as opposed to console? Taking into account, we understand that the whole aim assist dynamic is different. But are you finding, for example, I've heard that hand cannons are just kind of ruling the meta right now on PC.
They're very crisp. I think, I don't know what I've heard a few other people say this too, and I've heard a couple podcasts over the last few days, and it seemed to echo my same opinion. It seems like there is definitely more hand cannon usage on the PC, especially in Crucible, and it just seems to be because they've reduced the aim assist, I think, across the board on hand cannons in Destiny 2. When you have a mouse and keyboard, you don't have to deal with that. You just aim and shoot, right? There is a recoil that happens because it's the animation, right? It's different than a scout or an auto rifle where it goes upwards. You don't have that aspect of it, and you don't have the rumble, or at least I don't have the rumble effects on something. Maybe if you had an advanced mouse, perhaps, but I don't. My setup is fairly straight, plain Jane. I'm using Logitech mice and an Alienware laptop. It's nothing intense. But I do think that hand cannons are quite a bit more viable, and I think that's why I've heard echoed from others that are more experienced in Crucible on PC since the release itself. It seems to be there's definitely a different meta there, and I think scout rifles too. I think there's a little bit of a better precision. I tend to be a scout rifle person on Destiny in general, and I do find myself. Once I get my aim on, it's like that time when you're in a scout situation or a sniper situation, you definitely have that nice crispiness of where you want to shoot directly. So there's a more easily headshot potential is there. So I think if you're good with it, and then now the contrary to that is if your aim is off, your aim is off. You have no adjustment for it. So if you're on a bad night, sometimes you get frustrated and tilt. That can kind of make it worse than a controller. But so I think there's pros and cons, and I think again it's game awareness, it's gameplay, it's what your experience is. For me, I do like to play. Not that I'm like kind of lazing back in a recliner or anything, but I do like just being on the couch and TV. So that to me, a lot of times a controller is a little easier than having to deal with a keyboard.
And when the game does get frustrating, one of the disadvantages with a PC is you can't just chuck the mouse and keyboard like you do a controller. You got to actually go around and unplug them and then throw them.
See, you haven't seen enough videos on the internet, my son. You haven't seen the one where the guy takes the keyboard up and just slams it and the keys go everywhere. It's like chiclets.
Well, I guess I'll ask the next question. Now, there's reports that Destiny 2 is running on a pretty wide range of hardware. I didn't know if you guys wanted to share, what kind of rigs, if you're comfortable sharing what kind of rigs you're running on, because I myself, I'm always flirting with the idea of playing PC, but I doubt my hardware that I'm running on right now will even cover it. But I'm just curious to know, like, what kind of systems you're running on, if you have those specs kind of available.
Yeah, pop the hood. Let's take a look.
Just a rough.
Well, I know I'll take my turn first, and then Dino, you can kind of chime on yours. I do have I have a few different machines, but my best right now is my Alienware laptop, which is a GeForce, but it's a 2 to 3 year old video card, so it's definitely not bleeding edge. I mean, I have yet to go over to my brother's house and watch him on his dual SLI and trying to get him to get the game, basically, because he's bleeding edge technology, which he could probably run it similar to Tefty in the Church of Unlimited frames.
I was hoping that phrase did not come up on our podcast.
I was like, I love that phrase. It's the Church of the Unlimited frames, right?
Yeah.
Or I think something like that nature, frame rate. I'm pretty much able to run with it's a quad core processor, CPU, and then video is a 2 gig video card with 3D effects, obviously, and it's a GeForce GTX 680 equivalent. So it's a decent card. It is definitely not, it's not like a 1060 or a 1080 or 1070, I should say. It's definitely 2 to 3 years old. It shows its age in certain instances, but I will say this game, probably the only other game I would say besides Destiny that plays on older type rigs as well as they do is probably Doom, that was released last year. I think both of these engines were developed very strongly, looking at what is the lowest common denominator and what is the bleeding edge, because I can imagine even the bleeding edge would have a struggle with the top setting of Destiny, so it's I've seen people, and one of the really easy things to do is you go into the settings and you can say show my frame rate, or FPS, and you can have it show up in the upper right corner, so you can see what you're doing at that point. And I tend to average anywhere between probably high 40s, 50s, up to 60s. I don't go beyond 60 to 70, like 69 I think is the highest, or 70 I've probably seen maybe once or twice, but my rig is definitely not one that's getting above 100 FPS at all, but there is definitely a noticeable difference. I'll toss it to Dino for his sort of thoughts on setting.
Mine, I actually was gonna make the jump to do primary PC before joining Hoot Dawg, and so I started accumulating a bunch of parts the end of last year. So I've got a newer rig for this, and I've got a 1070 in it, and and so I've been able to get 120, sometimes up to 140 frames. So I mean it's running nice and smooth for sure. I mean, I had my son come over and look at it, and he just stopped and stared, and he's like, "It's so clear." That was his reaction to it. He's just like, "It's just so clear.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So it's a nice experience. But
awesome.
I mean, all my friends ended up back on PS4, so that's where I spent most of my time. But
right, yep.
No regrets there, though.
I forget if it was Ray or you, Gunbait, that said, are you willing to come down to the, the more the blurred or blurry sort of resolution? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. We'll play with friends. It's more about the community. But,
yeah, we'll play with
back down to the Church of extremely
capped
we'll play with
blurry friends.
There you go.
Yep. Yep. And actually, that's the other thing is you can, on an older, as long as you have a 3D card. I mean, the only thing I would say is you couldn't do it on an Intel inset video card. You'd need something that is at least a GeForce or a NVIDIA. One of the two, NVIDIA or ATI, I should say. You need something of that nature to kind of go with it, just to be able to get the bare minimum. But you can cap it at 30. There's some, if you had an older system, you could run it. I guess if you were just a PC player and you don't have consoles, I could see that being a nice option. But but why would you? If you had an option to get a console. Yeah. So, and I'm running at 1080, I don't have a 4K monitor or TV. I've kind of held off from doing that. So I don't know if you've got the 4K set up, and how much more beautiful that probably is as well.
No, I just have a 144 hertz monitor I'm running it on, but no 4K.
Mm-hmm. But that is one thing that you look at, and it is more vibrant, particle effects and other sorts of things. It's just, Void anything looks really sweet. Anything Void has that special sparkly effect. So it is a very beautiful thing. And I'm actually kind of happy about that, because the worst thing to happen is, and I hate this when this happens, some games have had this, where you have a PC release after a console or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And you can see they definitely developed for the console primarily, or just for PC, and they didn't do a good job. You see more of the opposite now. You see console games that are developed for console and then they get ported to the PC. I know they could probably use that term for Destiny. I wouldn't use the term port. To me, it doesn't capture what Destiny 2 is on PC. It definitely feels like a ground up game. The assets and video and and cinematics and such, those are all obviously reused, and textures and things like that are armor and such are all reused, but the engine that runs it, is definitely a very strong one.
Yeah, I agree. It's running beautifully, and it definitely doesn't feel like they just pulled it over from the PS4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As far as have either of you gone into Crucible on I don't know if you mentioned that or not, if you guys went into Crucible on PC yet, or...
I just did a little bit. I know, Dino, you did in the beta, or did you not do the beta? I did the beta, and I did a little bit with the release, but I did definitely more in the beta. I spent every day on the beta in the piece, and there really isn't much of a difference feel-wise for it. So I think it is definitely strong to play with. Again, it has all the same things that the PS4 version has. If you like the game modes, if you like the 4-on-4, that doesn't change. It's just... And the beautifulness of it isn't as, you're playing a multiplayer game. You're trying to get quick response, trying to map a guy, those sorts of things. I think it plays very similarly. I think the only thing that I laughed, I forget if I mentioned it to you, Gunbait or Dino, was the control game in Destiny 2 has changed so that when you don't need more than one person capping a point, which is pretty much the opposite of every game out there with either a capture the flag or a control. So you still see people, you see that in PS4 still and Xbox as well, but I think more so you even see it on the PC version where they don't quite get the game yet. If obviously there's some people that are coming over from console to PC, but I probably ran into more blueberries, our fun friends, the blueberries, that are definitely used to playing PC games, but they're not used to Destiny, because with Destiny there's a lot more verticality and other sorts of really interesting moves you can do, which you just don't find in your Call of Duty or Battlefield. I mean, in some more recent Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, maybe there was some, but it's still not the same thing. I think the closest thing to come to it is probably like a Planet Side or something like that, or Tribes back in the day, where you could maneuver a certain different way. But I think that's where I found myself really taking advantage over some of the PC players, because they're not used to it, looping and jumping and spinning around, throwing a grenade and then coming down. It's still pretty interesting to see that. They'll eventually get there, but it's something that they're just having to learn that, I think. You see that in some of the public events too. I think I made notes in this that it's almost a race against the blueberries to get into a heroic event. It's like, crap, okay, you get the ball, you get the other ball, bring down the thing for the second, the walker, or, shoot out this vent, before the Blueberries, finish the stupid public event before they realize it, so.
It's actually still the same way on console too. I mean, Dino can probably attest to this, where I'm shouting at the on the microphone going, "No, Blueberry."
Well, the other thing too is, if after 3 years people don't realize that you don't need to take more than 2 control points, I don't think they're ever going to get it through their head, the whole thing about we only need 1 guy per point. Otherwise, you're just kind of setting up the bowling pin so a striker titan can come in and knock them all down.
Yep. Right. He's like, why are they taking C? Why are they taking C? What are you doing? So.
At least you can
and that's not necessarily platform. That's just newness, I think, to the game. Right?
Why are you guys trying to take C message to one of your keys and just fire it off without a whole lot of extra effort?
Yeah, for the love of God, do not take C.
All right. And I guess I just had a couple, just some final questions, really. As far as going kind of back to connections, but with the Battle.net app, are you just blindly connecting into Destiny servers, or are you actually selecting countries or regions?
On the Blizzard app, you can select a region of the Americas or Europe. It looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, it detects a choice for you, but you could choose to pick another one for some reason. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess if you probably have friends in another country, you can probably hook up with them. Might be a less than desirable connection for you.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, you could just select Antarctica and you could just rule the Crucible.
No. They only gave us 2 options. You can only go to Europe or America. So.
Yep. They may filter based on knowledge of that. So yeah.
And it's my understanding that frame rates for cinematics are capped at 30 because that's what they were recorded at.
Correct. Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first thing where I saw 30. I was like, "What? Oh, video. Okay, it's a cinematic."
So is it upsetting kind of or how should I put off-putting a little bit to switch from higher frame rates and then dipping down for those?
Honestly, I don't know what you think, Dina. I've always, this is going to sound really strange for me. My brother and I get into this argument all the time. But for me, I actually prefer video, like those cutscenes, to be in a little bit less frame rate because otherwise you end up having, if you remember when The Hobbit came out, the original, first movie that came out this really crazy high frame rate version, and it just was really
like
odd looking. It gives what I think. Yeah, I call it the soap opera effect. It's the thing that I hate, and it's. And I don't want to open up this can of worms, but like there's certain TVs that do the smoothing and such, like that I automatically disable because I loathe that feel. I actually don't mind it. It's not the gameplay. It's a video. You cut into it. Too often, sometimes it's too clean or too sharp, and it's going to sound antithesis of what I'd said earlier, but I think the videos are fine. I think they were strong to begin with. The acting is good. I don't really notice much of a jarring other than the fact that my monitor is pretty good at detecting, so it's not like flickering or anything like that or do anything, but maybe if you had a different kind of older style monitor, it would kind of do something more jarring, but I just noticed it because my frame rate was up, like the number was displayed in my upper right corner, so otherwise I probably wouldn't have even thought of it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's kind of the same situation for me. I haven't noticed anything bad with it, and if I didn't have the little number up in the corner, I probably wouldn't have really realized it either.
Okay. Zoltanki, is there any other questions that you have for
the only
Dino
thing that I
ClearNite?
would that I've been kind of pondering is with the relative ease with some of the weapons in PvP, do you guys see competitive Destiny kind of migrating over to PC? That certainly kind of seems to be the trend. I know a lot of the top level players were really kind of chomping at the bit to get on PC, and you see they're doing a lot on PC currently. Do you guys see kind of the competitive scene move in that direction?
I'm curious of that because there's been precedent for certain games, like Overwatch came out and that was what happened there, right? I actually did buy Overwatch on PS4 and I've played it a little bit and just haven't really kind of gone back to it, but did not get it on PC. And I know in that community the PC is really sort of seemed deemed as the superior environment, and you see the competitiveness, but that's because that's the game's intent. The desire of it. I think Call of Duty kind of had the opposite. Call of Duty really was started as foundation in PC, realm, and it slowly migrated to be more successful in terms of competitive play on PlayStation, and that might just be because of Sony's influence, perhaps. But I think that depends on the sponsorships. I think that's ultimately what rules it. But there could be something with the community. I think you do see a lot of the better players, better within quotes, kind of migrating over and just to try it out. But I am curious to see once the dust settles, what ultimately is, the end result. Destiny, I think we'll see if it gets perceived as anything beyond a console started game, because there's always that stigma attached to a game that starts on a console. So I'm curious. That's why I was so happy to see it was such a strong build for PC, that you can't associate, that's a port. You can't really say that. Did it start on PC? No, but I think it's curious to see what the competitive, what does the MLG or the esports start to do? Are they going to sponsor PS4 tournaments, or are they going to sponsor PC tournaments? I think that will ultimately rule what the decision is there, to be honest.
And just to add on to your point about does it feel like a port, back in the day, if this was an issue coming back, being that PS4s, PCs, they're all running Intel processors or x86 or x64 processors even, if this were an issue from, Destiny 2 was out on a PS3, which was running on a can't remember the name of the processor, the cell processors that they're running on. If you're doing an outright copy of the game and putting it onto PC, I think it would be much more of an issue, and there would be much more criticism, because that would actually feel like a port. You're actually having to change the whole platform and the binary base of it to be able to run on a whole different processor. But I think now that the PS4s, the Xbox consoles, and PC, they all had that universality. They can actually, there should be some ease into sharing the code base for games across all platforms now. So I think that's another reason why it's just that's why it doesn't seem like a port, because there's we're pretty much running on all the same processors now. Except just the interfaces and how we access them now is just slightly different. But right. Anything else that you guys have for any final thoughts about the game? I mean, it seems like your general impression is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm the curious thing I want to see, and I think I made a note of this, is I went right to Destiny Tracker to see what the population went to, and because there was a little bit of discussion a while back when PS4 was the first week, was a certain numbers of millions of users, and it dipped within the second, third week, went down to a low number like 1 million or 2, so not dead game, right? But still not obviously what the peak was. What was the contingent of PC users? What influx did it happen? How many played? Is it 2 million? Is it 4 million? Did it not take off? I mean, I've seen a lot of publicity in Twitch stream, but that's like a 1 to 2%, population type thing. How many people are really playing it on PC? I'm kind of curious of that. And it's kind of a shame that Tracker had gotten in the middle of some things that they took it off the daily reports. But that's probably my biggest curiousness is does it sustain on the PC? I'm just happy that they did say going forward the cadence of release is going to be synchronized, because they did take a little bit of heat for warranted that came out later than the console. Yeah, I mean there's a lot more console control, a lot more variables than a console. Sure. So there's that.
Well, and I think that there's just a big history of games that started on console and they came to PC, or they tried starting them at the same time. There were some things that just went wrong with the PC versions of a video game. And I think that it was, gave them extra time to try, as people are saying, it's working on a wide range of hardware. I think that's a testament to, how much time they put into it and allowed that little extra time for it to be, to work on. Yeah. So, I for one, even though I'm not a PC player, I am happy that they took a little extra time to release it a little bit later. And from what I'm seeing, I mean, it seems to, did you have a queue, or did you have any loading issues loading into the game day one? I mean,
no, I did. I mean, I came in later in the evening, of course, so I didn't go at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But I don't know, Dino, what time you got on that day? I didn't hit anything, and even on PS4, I hit that at the midnight. Luckily, it was only 15 minutes, but I still hit it.
Yeah, no, I think I started probably an hour or so after release, and I had no issues getting on, and jumped right in. Everything ran smooth, and just started enjoying the game again.
And I think that's the key thing, is it ran smooth if you're updated drivers, right? I think that's always been the bane of, for me, at least for PC, is that just make sure you're on the most recent drivers. And even I have a GeForce setup, so NVIDIA was good enough to have a day before release of a new video specifically tailored towards Destiny 2. Even if the prior one still worked with it, it was optimized. So I immediately got that before I even tried the game, just because of my own experience over the many years. Make sure your drivers are up to date. Otherwise, you're going to run into weird issues. It saves you a lot of headache, so.
Yeah, I've got that GeForce experience on mine too, because I'm not a real heavy PC user yet, so anything that can help me along the way is nice. And that was nice, just to download that, let it run, and it optimizes everything for you, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to kind of mention. There's some tips for improvement, but one of the things that I liked about GeForce Experience is that it does, and some games, Steam will sometimes do this too, is where it'll see what your rig is, and it'll make recommended changes to the configuration as a default, so you can see what it was, and you can tweak it up and down as your taste. But if anything, it took mine a little bit lower than I would even be comfortable with. I was good with going a little higher on some things, but it was a nice thing to kind of do for the user, so they don't have to figure it all out, day one.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I tweaked mine and bumped the field of view up a little more, and I pretty much left everything else the same. But that was nice to have a starting threshold for everything, and then you can just tweak it a little bit, but you don't have to experiment too much.
It's also just good for us just to know that Hoot Dawg is still being represented on the cutting edge PC platform too.
Yeah. And I will say, I don't know, Dina, if you I got up to 20 finally. I didn't finish the story yet on PC, but I got to 20, and I was immediately able to go right to Hawthorne, and I got my Ingrams. I was like, yes, in the farm, in the farm, no less, and I got them. So I was happy about that. We didn't do the raid last week, but we had the Nightfall and the Crucible, so I was able to at least get a few more legendaries out of that one, which was nice.
Oh, nice. No, I ran out of time. I only got to 14, so I'm hoping to get it next week then. If we get some packages, I can get that.
Got to work hard on PS4 to pay off the PC players, man.
That's right. So Tinky and Gubbit got to get going there, and curious for that.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we'll get you that if you guys can get us the Trials Ingram.
That sounds like a
we'll do it this weekend. Oh wait. Actually, it does come back this weekend, doesn't it?
Oh,
crap. So
I'm going out of town this weekend.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. There you go. Well, I can definitely say that I think some of us on this podcast have been the ones who got the Ingrams this week. So, not saying we do that every week. Obviously, there's others in the clan that do a great job of getting it, but this particular week, we got those two particular ones, so I think it was just cashing in on the PC.
One of my favorite experiences so far with Destiny 2, and a couple of you guys were in on this, was when we had two separate teams going for the Nightfall at the same time, all in the same party chat. There is there's a really fun level of rivalry that's going on. Of course, I was not in the winning team on that one. You guys beat us by about 4 or 5 minutes, but yeah, definitely adds an interesting element to it.
Yeah, and that's might be one of the things we should do more of, because that was fun.
That was fun.
It was kind of, either side of coming out on that one, but that was still pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, super confusing, but but still fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thank you, ClearNite and Dino, for sharing your thoughts and experience. It's nice to see a different perspective, and kind of some firsthand knowledge. Even though we're not experiencing it firsthand, it's nice to vicariously live through you guys and see your experiences.
Sure thing.
So
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Okay, well, looks like our show is coming to an end here. That was a great discussion we had with ClearNite and jkdino. Just a few little things that I'd like to say as we come to the end. Our show email address is hootdogpodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like to send any questions or comments through that, we'd really appreciate it. We're also on Twitter now, and we're on, and that is twitter.com/hootdogradio. And if you would like to leave us a voicemail, you can call 419-515-6851. And remember to try to keep the voicemail to about 30 seconds or less so we can include it in our podcast as a nice little sound bite. I'd also like to announce at the end that we are now listed with iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play. So we're all also looking. Thank you. We're also looking for some feedback. If you know of any other podcast aggregate sites, send some suggestions our way, because we'd love to get into those areas and spread our podcast around. So, but no, we don't have a subscribe button. Please
like it.
Yo, it's your boy. No.
It's your boy. We need to get to 10 million likes on this one.
So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. This is once again our first podcast, and it's really great to have ClearNite and jkdino here as well. So with that, we'll sling around some contact information. What do you guys think? All right. I am Gunbait101. You can find me at Twitter, at twitter.com/gunbait_101. And, you can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/gunbait101. Zoltanki?
And, I'm Zoltanki on pretty much everything. My PSN is Zoltanki. I do have a Twitch. I don't do much with it. As we kind of move forward with the podcast, I'm going to be focusing on that more. So I'm just Zoltanki on Twitch, and that's ZULTANKY. Also have a Twitter that I totally ignore, but I just set up a new one for just podcast, and that is Zoltanki Gaming. And you can join the 3 bots that are currently following me.
ClearNite.
Sure thing. This is ClearNite, and you can pretty much find me on any platform, ClearNite. The only one is Twitter, where I have to do ClearNite_ because somebody is camping on my name. And I did that before I really realized a better way of doing the suffixes, so I'm stuck with that one for now until that person eventually gets disabled, hopefully. But yeah, I'm on Twitch TV /ClearNite, and pretty much on everything: Xbox, PSN, Bellnet, anything, Steam, I think. So find ClearNite, you find me.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, my man jkdino. Where can people find you?
You can find me Twitter. I primarily use that to follow other people, but it's jimdino24, and my PSN jkdino, and Xbox is jimdino.
Awesome. Okay. With the contact information out of the way, I guess we're here to close it out. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to Hoot Dawg Radio. And I'd like to say that this is our first podcast. So we did have a beta release before this, but we're going to try to keep things a little bit nice and tighter and break up the conversation a little bit so we can have nice little focused chats here and there. So we're going to try to record on a weekly basis. We still haven't exactly nailed down a schedule yet. I'm hoping to record it right around either Sunday or Monday. I would hope to actually lean more towards Sunday, if anything, and then at least have it out by reset. So that's kind of our goal right now. So anywho, thank you for listening, everyone, and you have a wonderful week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.